I'm still with you here on today's edition of Cairo Local Time, and we're now delighted to be joined over the telephone by our guest for this afternoon, Dr. Abdel Megeed Salema, the economic expert. Dr. Abdel Megeed, it's a very good afternoon to you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, lady.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us this afternoon. And today we have a very important discussion taking a look at Egypt's strategic role in the African continent and the priorities of Egypt in strengthening bilateral ties with its African neighbors, whether it's economically or security-wise or even in military fields, as well as the influence of Egypt in such areas. How do you see the importance of this step by Egypt, Doctor?
Well, I agree with you that Africa is a very good and important part in the Egyptian economy, and we should make use of it.
Yes.
I would say that, unfortunately, due to the economic circumstances around all over the world and the political opportunities or political reflections of what's happening right now, so now I found it more and more important to have some relation with Africa. Africa now is considered the only open window for our economy.
Yes.
With all over what's happening in the world, Europe is in a disaster, US versus Russia versus China, all that. They are in a mess, all in all. So the only left opportunity for us is Africa. And now, to speak about Africa, we are speaking about different attitudes in Africa. Some countries like Ethiopia is anti-us. Some economics like Morocco and South Africa, they are competitors with us. Some countries like Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, whatever the names, and some in the West are the part of Africa, they are open for positive dealings with the Egyptian economy. However, and we have to be very careful with however, life is not all that positive. We have a lot, and I mean a lot, of steps to overcome the problems with Africa.
Yes.
Now we are facing, in the last few months, hard economy with the fluctuation of the Egyptian currency. So if we are going to export, we don't know what is the situation because we don't know the value of the services we are going to do, if it is a product or if it is a service. The government have to do something to stabilize situation, because let me say that if we go back to the history with Africa, in the 60s or in the late 50s and early 60s and up to the late 60s, we have a very positive relation with Africa. We were penetrating very strongly there. And then we had a step back during the 70s, 80s, 90s until the relation was practically closed after this big accident in Ethiopia in the mid-90s. And now the new government or the...
We have a revival, yes, a revival.
Yeah, and the new directions of the Egyptian government and the Egyptian economy is to retry to open the economy with,
and in this regard,
economic relation with the African continent.
Yes, Doctor.
We have to step in very strongly. We started 4 or 5 years ago. We had some good projects in Tanzania, in Nigeria, in West and East Africa, and now we have to continue.
Yes. In this regard, Doctor,
if
let me ask you, in light of this comment, we've recently, heard lots of collaboration between Egypt and African countries, and President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi himself asserted in a speech via video conference in his participation in the 8th gathering of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation on the importance of cooperation in many regards, facing the negative impacts of the coronavirus pandemic as well as the Russian-Ukrainian war, etc. And the president spoke about the need to implement the African Continental Free Trade Area to achieve economic trade integration amongst African nations, which, as you said, Africa has become, a very important source now of trade with Egypt.
Well, you are saying exactly what I was saying.
Yes.
That
Yes.
the government started, the Egyptian partners started to go into Africa,
Yes.
and now we have the epidemic, we have the conflict in Europe between Russia and Ukraine, the war, we have the hard, tough competition and conflict between China and U.S. And now, are we going to stop and wait? In this case, we are going to go out of Africa and then forget it for another many years. Or we have to be very aggressively going in the same direction. The president, as you are saying, is supporting the government.
Yes.
Has to be very active in overhauling the problems to continue. Because, as I'm saying again, Africa is the very most important countries and continent where we can have some partners, where we can have some progress. Our economy can expand into this direction. But we should not be reluctant. We should not stop until we overcome. No, we have to do it. We have to push aggressively. As you are saying, in Tanzania, some engineering companies have started a huge project, $3-4 billion of work between the Egyptian companies and
their
the Tanzanian side.
Yes.
Now we have to step and push aggressively in the same direction. Our language, I don't mean the language as Arabic language or English, no. I mean our language as a habit of business, as how we are doing our work, how we are, it started to be there. So we have to complete pushing in this direction.
Yes,
we have to jump to the other countries where you mentioned there were China, African countries,
Yes.
and then there were another summit, the American, African countries.
Yes.
So we, as Egypt, are now one of the leaders in the African community, of the African economics, of the African countries leading the economy. This is perfect. Let's continue.
Yes.
Do not stop us. We have to do it very strongly. And luckily, the government and the political support is already there. There are a lot of forums which happen. There are a lot of discussions. Let us aggressively push in this direction.
Absolutely. And other continents are also moving, towards collaboration with the African continent. We've seen, for example, China, the Chinese foreign minister on his recent tour of several African nations on his first time out of China after assuming the post. Very important signal that, the African nation has great potential.
Yes, of course. Let me at first, you are now raising another subject. You are saying Africa and the international powers. Now, Africa already in the old days was practically split between England and France. And then with the globalization, U.S. is trying and China is going very strongly. So Africa now is under tension between four power.
Different powers, yes.
France, England as all the powers. China and US as new incoming powers. We have a golden opportunity.
Yes.
We as Egypt, nowadays, I'm not speaking about 10 years ago, I'm speaking about nowadays.
Yes.
We have some sort of a balance between some of these powers. We have a good relation with China, we have a good relation with US, we have a good relation with France. So these powers, the old and the new, we are having a positive relation with them politically and economically. Now it's our role to how to adjust and proceed to us, I mean to ourselves,
Yes.
to our country, Egypt, to make the balance and go into there. Okay? I do not speak, let me be very clearly, frankly, I do not speak English, I do not speak French, I do not speak Chinese, I speak Egyptian. So we have to care that and go into this.
Absolutely.
All these countries, the powers I'm saying, they are ready to go into Africa through us because we are the more closely and more native with the African countries.
Yes.
But we have to do it professionally.
Absolutely right. I'd like to thank you very, very much, Dr. Abdelmegid Salem, our economic expert and our guest. Thank you very, very much, sir, for your time and for joining us on today's edition of Cairo Local Time. And moving on with more news, the Minister of Electricity, Mohammed Sheikher, said that coordination is underway with the Greek side to agree on the International Consultancy Office that will conduct technical and economic feasibility studies of power connection projects between the two countries. Sheikher said 2,000 megawatts can be exchanged through the electricity interconnection project between Egypt and Greece. He added that an agreement was held with